The sun soaked the Santa Monica Pier in a brilliant, warm light. The air was a mix of laughter, the cheerful music of a carousel, and the sweet smell of spun sugar. All around, families wandered along the old wooden planks. Children excitedly pointed at the towering Ferris wheel, and couples leaned on the railing, lost in the rhythm of the waves below. But in the middle of this perfect picture of happiness, a young woman sat still in her wheelchair. Marissa Hart, only 19, felt like a ghost in the crowd. A car accident had stolen the use of her legs, and with it, her feeling of belonging. She had always loved the pier. The salty breeze, the distant tunes of a street musician's guitar, and the joyful screams from the roller coaster used to make her feel completely alive. Now, they were just reminders of a life she watched from the sidelines. Her biggest fear wasn't the chair itself, but the way people's eyes would drop to it before ever meeting her own. Today, she had made a promise to herself. She would push past the fear. She would roll down the pier alone, buy herself a cold lemonade, and just be a part of the world. She craved the simple feeling of being normal, even for an hour. But her peace was about to be broken. From across the boardwalk, 3 young men spotted her. They were loud and walked with a clumsy confidence, clearly wanting everyone to look at them. The one in the middle wore a bright floral shirt, his chest puffed out to show off the tattoos that snaked down his arms. His 2 friends flanked him in faded denim vests. They had been laughing loudly and shoving each other around, but their smiles turned mean when they saw Marissa. They moved toward her like hunters closing in. The man in the floral shirt leaned down, his face uncomfortably close to hers. "Move," he sneered, the word sharp and ugly. The single word cut through the happy sounds of the pier and struck Marissa like a physical blow. She froze, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair. She was used to quiet whispers and awkward glances, but this was different. This was raw, public cruelty. Before she could find her voice, before she could even think to move, the man laughed and kicked the side of her wheelchair. The impact was jarring, sending her chair lurching sideways. A gasp escaped her lips as she threw one hand out to catch herself, her other hand desperately holding on. For a terrifying second, she thought she would tip over completely onto the hard wooden planks. Around them, people stopped and turned, heads swiveled in their direction. But just as quickly as they looked away. A man pulled his child closer. A couple suddenly found the ocean incredibly interesting. A group of teenagers became absorbed in their phones. That was the moment Marissa's heart truly broke. It wasn't just the bullies' hateful act, but the crushing silence of everyone else. Her eyes started to sting with tears she refused to let fall. But the men weren't done. They started to jeer, pointing at her as if her disability was the funniest joke they had ever heard. "Look at that," one of them mocked. "Bet you can't even stand up without someone holding your hand." The other one howled with laughter, bending over and slapping his knee as if to prove the point. Each word was another hammer blow to her already fragile courage. She wanted to disappear, to roll away as fast as she could, but her arms felt like they were filled with lead. Then, the air began to change. It started as a low, deep rumble, a vibration she could feel coming up through the wood of the pier. The bullies' laughter started to die down as they, and everyone else, turned to look toward the street. One by one, gleaming motorcycles began to roll onto the pier's entrance. The afternoon sun glinted off polished chrome and spotless paint. They were covered in black leather, their boots were heavy, and their arms were covered in tattoos that spoke of a hard-lived life. They kept coming, more and more of them, until there were dozens. Their engines growled together, a sound like approaching thunder. The entire pier seemed to shake as they parked their bikes in a long, perfect line and got off. A wall of bikers, all broad-shouldered and with serious faces, began walking toward Marissa. There were men and women, some older with gray in their beards, others young and strong, but they all wore the same look of silent, controlled anger. The patches on their vests showed they belonged to a club, but it was their powerful unity that commanded attention. The bullies, who had seemed so big and threatening just moments before, suddenly looked pale and small. The man in the floral shirt lost his smirk. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but the bikers were closing in too fast. The noisy crowd on the pier had fallen completely silent. Every eye was now locked on this unbelievable scene. Marissa held her breath. She had never seen anything like this. This army of leather and steel moved with a single purpose, their boots hitting the wood with a heavy, rhythmic beat. Their leader, a tall man with a thick silver beard and eyes that were both calm and blazing with fury, stopped just a few feet from the bullies. He didn't say a word. He just folded his massive arms and stared at them, his gaze so intense it felt like it could cut steel. Behind him, the rest of the bikers spread out, forming a solid protective circle around Marissa and her chair. The bullies stumbled backward, their fake confidence melting away under the silent pressure. Not a single biker raised their voice or lifted a hand, but their message was perfectly clear. You will not touch her. You will not look at her. You are done here. Marissa could feel her own heart pounding in her ears. For the first time since the accident, she didn't feel weak or pitied. She felt defended. She felt important. She felt seen. The bikers didn't need to shout. Their quiet strength was more powerful than any threat. The pier, which had been filled with cruel laughter, now hummed with a tense respect. The same people who had looked away were now staring, completely captivated, some raising their phones to capture the moment. The bullies, realizing they were now the center of a very different kind of show, turned and practically ran, their shoulders hunched in defeat as they disappeared into the crowd. Then, the most amazing thing happened. The biker leader turned to Marissa, and the hardness in his face softened into genuine concern. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level, a gesture of respect she hadn't felt in a very long time. You're safe now, he said, his voice deep and rough, but filled with an incredible gentleness. Tears finally welled in Marissa's eyes, and this time, she let them fall. She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. All around her, the other bikers began to smile. Some gave her a thumbs up. One woman gently rested a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of quiet support. They didn't see a broken girl in a wheelchair. They saw a person who deserved to be stood up for. The moment felt suspended in time. The Ferris wheel continued its lazy circle against the blue sky, and the ocean breeze still carried the smell of salt and popcorn. On that bright California day, an army of bikers had turned a moment of pure cruelty into one of powerful, unforgettable humanity. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a ripple of applause. The crowd that had once been silent now clapped and cheered. Parents smiled with relief, and strangers came forward to offer Marissa a kind word. But nothing compared to the warmth spreading through her chest, the profound feeling of knowing that for once, when cruelty had shown its ugly face, courage had answered back. In the days that followed, the story of what happened on the pier spread far and wide. The videos people had taken showed the world that powerful moment when the bikers formed their silent wall, and it became a symbol of what it means to stand up for another human being. It was a story that reminded everyone that sometimes the strongest among us are the ones who protect the vulnerable, not with fists, but with their unwavering presence.